Okay, so we start off the new dialog, start a new project in a new folder, name GTK settings, GTK project. Next step, what libraries you want to use, well, the defaults are available, and then what target and what files we're going to use. We're going to sort of add a new file, which is going to be the simple class to wrap the keys, which is similar to the way that the GTK demo version of this is done. So we have here the auto completion working reasonably well in the plain text editor dialog version. You'll see later. Now this is where I get a bit confused. I just did a typo there and it's telling me I've got a typo. So rather than checking what the error was, I went hunting around because I didn't trust the fact the language server was working well, but it is actually working, and we'll fix that in a minute when I finally work it out. So we're going to just add a series of properties to the so still trying to work out why am I getting error, but it's actually because it's spelt wrong. So again, in the property we set getters and setters, which later on means we can bind these properties and use them as in the list. So yeah, let's see. Again, it's auto completion is kind of working here, I think. I'm quite sure. Again, I'm trying to check whether we've got the library. Can't understand why it's got the. I tried enabling, disabling, but I think at this point, I finally work out that it's got the wrong thing there. So finally, off we go. So we was doing the next settings. So all of these are based on the original code in the GTK library. So we're actually just going to do 5 properties, all slightly different. So summary property. Again, this is on the key. I think auto completes quite nicely, although a bit overwriting with a double call method call. So this one has to be owned. I already knew this, and it has to be cast, and it actually does tell you quite nicely if you don't do that with the language server errors. And this is the value of the I don't think in this example I actually bothered to sort out settings, so so when you use a function with a property, at the moment we're filling in the argument name sometimes, although later on you'll see sometimes it gets a bit confused about that, so it might need a bit more work. You can see there we've missed out the owned default values, and again this is on the key. Again, it has to be owned. Get rid of that key, get default value, and you get a print false. And now I think there's the constructor. So settings, and not much here, so we're just setting up the constructor. So down the bottom right we've got the running count of the errors in the software. So in theory that means 2 errors in this file and 1 somewhere else, but I'm not sure that's supposed to be what it says. Okay, so we know now it's working because it says run, all the errors are cleared up. So now we'll go on to editing the user interface. So this is where what we're trying to achieve is a user interface where you can actually code up the signal handling along with the interface. So the preview on the right, I've never really, well, we've done a little work on that, but we're not really that heavily focused on it. Mainly being focused on the getting all of the properties up and out. So again, here we go, we're going to add the title bar, select the header bar, just double click on the property add. So there's 2 ways to add objects. One is the add property, where things like header bar, and the add button there on the left, you can see the you can add child widgets where you have a widget that accepts multiple things like append. So we're just going to put the icon on the top of the window, so you can actually change the way it's going to pack. The default is to pack add, and also I think you saw briefly we can give IDs, and you'll see a bit later how there's a variable called underscore this that gives you the scope of the whole window, and then underscore this, and then dot whatever the ID is, a reference to the wrapper element. So we're now adding the child for the window, which is a pane, and then a first scroll. So we look at the left hand side column of the Windows source, the settings dialog, and you can see it has a basic understanding of the types, the enumerations, any sort of integers, etc. So you can see, I'm sure in the demo you actually see much of that, but we quickly go through. You can actually modify all of the left hand side. So at the bottom you've got XNS and Xtype. So the original design decision was based around a JavaScript application. They in theory should really be joined up, but then that means a bit of a hack away at the code to make that change, but again it's on the low priority fixes. So again you're doing CS classes. This is standard vala syntax for an array of strings. So it'll build that in there. Unfortunately, I have no idea where the classes come from. Documentation on all of that part seems a bit vague, hunting down names of classes. So again, sort of setting up the column view here. This is where it gets interesting. So we start adding the model. So the model's not really a widget; it's actually a object. So you're actually it's really an object model and not a just a widget modeler. Again, get the single selection model. You set the settings of that, and then we go into give it a name, which I can refer to later if I'm not sure if that's actually used or not. I can't remember. So the next job is to add the submodel, which is going to be a sort list model. So the left tree is sorted by default. Incremental, I presume that background sorting, but I can never remember that one. So the next one is to put a tree list sorter, because it's a tree, so you can't actually sort. There's got a bit of working out. You actually have nest the string sorter in a tree list sorter. So the next one, I just set up the property on which is going to be sorting. So we're going to sort on the schema ID and the type of the property. This one doesn't have auto completion, unfortunately, because it's actually a setting, but yeah, it could be debatable whether we should switch that to using the editor, and then you can auto complete. I'll talk about that a little later when we get starting editing some code. So here we go, the tree list model. So a lot of these are the constructor properties, and if we actually bothered looking at the code, which I don't in this demo, it's just a warning about my Git watching. But you can see, right, so again I still need to fix a bit of the type ahead here, or the auto completion inside of node properties, because this is actually, the file is generated, and working out the location of your current cursor within the file is a little tricky. I'll probably work it out eventually. So again, we've got another property there, pass through. Now that's actually interesting. That's a big gotcha. If you don't set the pass through to false, you end up with not having a tree model returned on the other search and everything. So obviously the subcomponent of a tree model is the list store. We give that a name. There we go. Items. Type of, again, that's geo settings. So that's all we needed to do there. So we go back to the top, go to there, and then we can start adding the columns in. Yeah, I think it was a bit, yeah, here we go, columns, give it a title, property, expand, Is it resizable? Yep, I think so. So these are all the event handlers for the signal factory. So you actually end up with a bit of hard coding for the actual widgets within a tree column. It's not perfect in terms of the way of doing this. It would be nice to just add elements into the model and then somehow refer to them, but for the time being this is good enough. It works works reasonably well. So again, here is one of the issues with the auto completion not really working properly. I mean, it works very basically, but as soon as you get to the first dot it is completely lost because there's no idea where the actual position of the character is. So we're just building a very basic column view column, which has just got a label in it. So we're going to call the list item. We're going to add we'll set the child to be the new widget we created. So the next step, we actually end up doing a delay on the syntax checking because it kind of hammers the language server, and then again that in turn hammers the interface a bit if we do it too often. So there's a little bit of a delay on the syntax check. You see now it's decided that the syntax is perfectly okay. Now we're going to bind the try and put some data onto the widget, and we spell expand wrong obviously. List item as never quite sure why the callback for a bind isn't a list item. It doesn't really make sense, but I guess it was designed to handle other classes. I guess I don't be used on other classes, but so again here we go. They grab the label from the list item, and again before I use get child, but obviously child is available as a property, so we can just use that. So now we get the tree list row, which you can then get the stored object. Again, there's a little nuance of this tree method is you actually have to get one to get the other. So yeah, that's the actual stored data in the row. Now we're going to use bind property. You see auto completed with the elements, but again he got it slightly wrong, although yeah, you can see owned I think is it trying to extract from the signature from the help target or whatever. It doesn't really know how to do that. Yeah, I just added that in yesterday as a bit of fun. Again, it would be nice if that auto completed, but yeah, we'll play around with getting the auto completion in the properties working a bit better soon. Little typo there. And this is where this one is the expander, so it's a little bit more complicated, so we have to set the expander whether it's visible based on whether or not the GTK settings have any sub schemas to them. Yeah, I've been a little bit explicit there, saying true or false, because obviously the first one will return true or false, but yeah, I always find it a little bit easier to read. Yeah, so we got okay. So now I've worked out that I've done some typos somewhere, and where have I done them? I think there's a double comma, and I spot a very quickly. There's a little zoom at the top there, which is kind of helpful sometimes to yeah, and so finally decided there's no errors in there. We go on to the next one. So this is where I'm going to add, let's see, okay, this is the next column of the layout is the end child, is a right hand column is a search bar which is normally hidden, and then below that is the settings for the key values, and you can adjust them. So we're setting up the search bar here, and just make sure you have to put H expand everywhere, because or V expand. Well, in this case we're not going to expand it, but so this is the event handler. I don't know if you notice the notify will list all the properties, so you can quickly find out what, so you get a signal handle if any of the properties change, which yeah, is kind of like digging around the JavaScript, the vala documentation to understand what notify and the subarrays are. It's, this one makes it pretty easy to sort out now because you've obviously got them listed in front of you. So we're going to bind the visibility of this search bar based on the toggle button at the top on the menu. And we've got a missing semicolon somewhere. Okay, I'm going to stop recording there. I'm going to have to replay this because the rest of the video goes a bit haywire, and you see the colours will go completely wrong in a minute. There we go, starts to deteriorate. So I'm going to record part 2 in a separate video.